In this presentation, we will take a look at a deduction related to the business use of a home. In other words, a home office for a small business or a sole proprietor. First, let's consider the rationale of having a write-off or a deduction for the business use of a home. Note that if we are a small business, then if we had a separate office, then of course we would have rent on the separate office or some type of depreciation on that office, and that would be a normal business expense that we would get to write off. If on the other hand we work from home, and let's say that this part of our home is what we use for our business, well, we are in a way taking that home and paying rent on it in a way, because we're now taking that piece of our home and using it for business. So the benefit we're getting if we have an office that we can write off, we're not getting if we're working and we're consuming part of our home as a part of the business. And therefore, there's an allowance for getting a write-off or a deduction for part of that home as a business expense. That's going to be the idea that we will be taking a look at. Now, you can see here that we have a problem in that we're mixing some things that are personal and business. And our goal here is to try to separate those out in some way so that we can have the business deductions on the Schedule C, personal deductions somewhere else. For example, you'll note that the home here is going to be something that we make it a personal deduction for something like the mortgage related to the home, and we make it a deduction for property taxes related to the home. But now some of those property taxes and mortgage may be allocated to the business portion of the home. So those are a couple things we're going to have to kind of break out. What's the personal use? What's the business use? In order to do that, we're going to have to define in some way what the business part of the home is and how to allocate the expenses related to it, properly deduct them for business use as opposed to the... For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Personal use. So the business use of the home must be exclusive use, at least for a particular part of the home, regular use of it, and for the taxpayer's trade or business. These are similar to the ordinary and necessary requirements for business expenses. The use of the home has to have a designated area, so we need to have a designated area of the home that is used exclusively for business in order to have the deduction. When we consider the business use of the home, this is usually with regards to a sole proprietor. So if we see, okay, we have a Schedule C income, then we got to say we're a small business, we're a sole proprietor. Where do we work? Where do we do most of our work? If it's from home, then we consider, is it possible for write-off of the home office or the place of work? To be able to write it off, typically we need a portion of that home that is designated specifically for work. So if we have a portion of the home that we do work in an area that's close to where we do personal stuff, like we're just doing work in front of the TV or something like that, probably not going to work. If we have a separate home office that we work in, then that's something that probably will work. So that, for a small business, then is typically where we have the use of the home as possibly being a write-off. However, what if we're in a situation where we have a W-2 employee, we work for somebody else, and we work from home? Oftentimes, this situation is not going to be as beneficial for us, even if we qualify, because we're not getting the deduction on the Schedule C. We're not getting to write it off against the Schedule C income. We're getting W-2 income and possibly a deduction for an itemized deduction if we get one at all for the home use. So therefore, it's usually a lot more beneficial if it applies to business income than if we were able to get it for W-2 type income. The use must be for the convenience of the employer in order to qualify for a W-2 type of income. The business use of the home form will be an 8829. So we're going to have an 8829. We're going to have to calculate the business use of the home, and then we'll pull that over to the Schedule C to help us out to calculate the net income from the Schedule C from the business, which will then be pulled over to Schedule 1 and ultimately to the 1040 for taxable income. Expenses used directly for the business are 100% deductible. So note, we're imagining some small piece of the house that we're using. Now, if there's anything that we did directly to that piece of the house, like we renovated that house for our business, we put shelves in it that are whatever for the business, well then of course that's directly related to the business. We don't have to prorate that as part of the house that we're allocating to the business. It's directly in the portion of the house that is for business. Indirect expenses, on the other hand, are going to have to be something that we allocate in some way. So if we're talking about something like the utilities in the house, the heater in the house, well, that's something that may be in the whole house, of course, and there's no easy way to apply it. We can't just say this part of the electric bill is for the home. How do we do that if we're going to do that? Well, one way we can do it is we prorate it with a ratio of the square footage. We could say, take the square footage of the home that we use, and then the square footage of the business area, and we take the area of our office divided by the total use of the property or the home or what we typically use, and that will give us a ratio that we can then use to apply to break out the portion that we break out to the office. So that'll be one way that we can calculate things that are indirect in usage. Now, things that are indirect are going to be things like the utility bill oftentimes. They're going to be things, if we think about the payments that we make for the interest on the home, that could be something that could be indirect. If we were to depreciate the home, then we'd have to depreciate some portion of the home that would be allocated to the business area. Note also that the business use of the home will be limited to the business income. So we can't use the home in order to take our Schedule C income to a negative amount. So if we have a negative amount on our business, the home isn't going to help us. And basically you can rationale why would the IRS say that. The home office is often one of the larger kind of deductions, and the IRS is once again skeptical of having losses, because if we have a loss on the Schedule C, then we get to take that loss and reduce possibly other types of income like W-2 income with it. And therefore the IRS is skeptical of that. So if there's a loss due to the home office, then the IRS is going to say, hey, we're going to limit that and say that you can't bring the Schedule C income below zero to a negative due to the use of the home office, and then take that loss and apply it out to other income. This is an example of the Form 8829, business expenses for business use of your home. Part 1, this is going to calculate our ratio, the ratio we're typically going to use for the indirect type of expenses to allocate the indirect type of expenses. We won't go through an example now, we'll go through examples later. And then we're going to have to figure your allowable deductions, and we'll have those deductions that will be direct and those deductions that will be indirect. The indirect ones, we're going to use the percentage we came out from, or the ratio from Part 1, in order to allocate those indirect expenses. And then Part 3, depreciation on your home if applicable. And then we got the carryover of the unallowed expenses to 2019. If we weren't allowed the expenses in the prior year, why? Because maybe we had a loss and we couldn't take them, then we have possibly carryovers to the next year. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.